Welcome back to the Two Blues podcast and to another Two Blues Tuesday. Myself joined by my co-host, Mr. C Money Picks, and we are attacking the Chelsea transfer window today. We are going to go through all of the Chelsea transfers, rank them A through F, maybe a couple of A stars in there. Don't even know if we're going to get to the A stars, but obviously we're going to get through each and every transfer, the incomings, the outgoings. Mr. C Money. Deadline day on the same day as a game for Chelsea. Not ideal, but I mean, before we get into the transfers, big win last night.
100%. I thought it was, it looked like it was going to be a bit of a shady game. West Ham, they're one of those teams alongside the likes of Brentford. They just somehow manage to do it against us every now and then. And it's always a game I go into worrying. I looked at their lineup and I was thinking, this is not going to be an easy walkover type of game. But listen, as ever, both teams to score, Chelsea to win, cashes. It just seems, as you said, every week, it seems to be the bet to play. So, yeah, man, it's just another one where Chelsea leave it down to the wire. And a little bit of good luck. We haven't really had that as of late. So it's nice to have that on our side for once, but with that little deflection off Wan-Bissaka. But I feel like it was deserved. With the tide of the game, I thought with how we were playing, we should have won that game, and we did. It wasn't as much of a smash and grab as it might have looked at on paper.
Nah, and obviously Cole Palmer, the hero again. I mean, a little bit of struggle to create, I suppose, but more again, problems in the box, problems in the number 9, and no attacking reinforcements for Chelsea. So, I mean, before we get into the specifics, how do you feel about Chelsea's window, kind of just reflecting on it one day after the deadline day? How do you feel about the window as a whole?
Yeah, I thought we would have done more in inbounds wise. I was quite surprised that we only really signed the Amougou centre midfield player. I thought we would have went out there and went for a striker. Thought we would have gone out there and went for a left back rather than loaning them out. The only two rotationally left backs we have, I guess, we're gone. So yeah, it's interesting. It almost feels like we've taken a plaster off and then not put the fresh one on. It feels like we've just kind of left us with a little bit more of a wound more than anything after the transfer window. So I'm not best pleased with the lack of inbounds, but I think a lot of the outbounds were coming. Were always going to happen in due course. So yeah, when it comes to the outbounds, a lot of the players that we've managed to ship off on loan with clause to buy, I'm happy with.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll start there. So jumping straight into the transfers. And before we do, obviously, guys, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And this is a live episode. We're going to be here for about an hour, if not more, talking Chelsea transfers and everything else football throughout the week. So make sure to get involved in the comment section. Let us know what you think of the individual players of the window as a whole. And we will get into your comments in due time and hopefully have a little bit of back and forth if you're still watching. But to get into a comprehensive analysis of the players we have brought in, Mathis Amougou, as Charm said there, the only signing Chelsea have made. We've bought back a couple of players from loan, recalled them from their loan spells, but Amougou, the only player that we have bought in, 15 million euros, signed from Saint Etienne, 19-year-old French midfielder. Very similar profile to a few of the players that we already have on the books, and dare I say, not too dissimilar to some that we have just let go. But and I'm quoting here because this is not a player that I'm familiar with, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm aware of who he is and what he's about, but known for his vision, technical skills, and versatility in midfield roles. I mean, sounds to me like we've got another Andre Santos that we can maybe use for 4 months before he comes back.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I thought the same thing. It's a player I've not really heard of. Obviously, being 19 and with that £15 million price tag, it's probably another project player. Once again, we all know how I feel about them. It's not necessarily ideal. It's not what we need. But yeah, just looking at some of the profiles of players that we have on the books, a lot of the players that we've just sent out on loan, the likes of Chukwuemeka, I find it difficult to kind of draw the differences and comparisons. Obviously, once again, like you said, it's not a player that I'm overwhelmingly familiar with, but what's been said about him is pretty positive. But it just doesn't seem like the transfer that we needed to make. As I was saying, I think that the idea of grabbing a left back would have been ideal. I think the idea of going in for a striker would have been ideal. And obviously, I was quite high on the Mathis Tel train. So when I heard that he wasn't going to Spurs, I figured that it would have been us putting in a bid. But to be honest, I didn't really hear much about us and any striker, including Mathis. I didn't really hear too many rumours once Chelsea were in and out of that conversation. So yeah, I'm a little bit disappointing. Just getting in the one kid who, once again, a bit of a project player, someone with a lot of question marks around him. I don't necessarily know if it was the best move, but it's a signing that's been made, so we can only fingers crossed and hope he's all right.
And this is kind of partially why. Oh, okay, don't know why that's happened. This is partially why I started with this transfer. This is probably going to be the hardest one to rank, A to F, or A star to F, if you will. What are you ranking this transfer?
Yeah, I think that with the profile of the players we have in the club, with what we need, I would probably give it, like, let's call it a C plus, like straight in the middle of the road. A little bit more on the happy side, because I could do, like, I'm not going to complain about a little bit more depth in midfield. Probably cuts off kid in Dewsbury Hall's hours. So that would be kind of nice to see that replaced. Exactly, right? Fingers crossed. And it just takes one little domino in that midfield to come tumbling down. We've seen a little bit of fitness concerns around, the likes of Lavia, the likes of Enzo. So yeah, if one of them was to come out instead of having it replaced with Kiernan, it would be nice to have a young player getting some tread on the tyres. So I would say a C plus. Seems irrelevant, but I can understand it working.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the reason for 15 million euros, the profile of player, you can only assume that this is a player Chelsea have bought in for the future with a long-term view to use this player. I mean, I kind of, we talked about Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, another player who I think is the definition of superfluous at the moment, Omari Kellyman. I feel like Omari Kellyman is exactly the same profile. I mean, I haven't seen maybe enough of Omari Kellyman to say this, but I feel like he's very, very similar to what Amougou is being described as, and what we are looking at in a few of these other players. And maybe, dare I say it, Cesare Casadei, who I kind of alluded to earlier. But I mean, obviously, if you are going to get rid of Casadei, Chukwuemeka, and Enzo Maresca has said, with slight injuries to Enzo Fernandez, we do need depth. Whether this was the right option for depth, I don't know. I also don't know what's going on with my camera. Apologies. We'll get that sorted transition. But yeah, I can't fault you with that. I mean, I'm going to go one further, and I'm just going to go with a D rating for this transfer. I just feel like it's not. I feel like it's, and maybe it's kind of a little bit weighted due to other decisions like Harvey Vale, Akamea in that academy, like Russell Denny, letting a few of these players go. I do just feel like they're not really going to get a chance. And when I do see players like Omari Kellyman, and then 6 months later you've got players like Amougou coming in, very similar profile, I just don't know how much hope there is for this Chelsea team. All the talk was around, is he going to come to Chelsea or is he going to go to Strasbourg? That shouldn't even be a conversation. I mean, I'm grateful for the fact that we have a sister club. It's fantastic. I know other teams hate it, but for us, it's fantastic. And, I do feel like for the players, it's definitely not a positive, knowing that you could potentially be sidetracked very, very quickly, within very legal framework is kind of nuts to me.
Yeah, and just to give a pushback on that, I think that to some degree, I think some players can appreciate the decision being made, because let's take a player like Olaena. He wouldn't have been able to really break into that Chelsea starting 11, and if he did, it would have taken an awful lot. It would have shown a lot of proving himself, a lot of time worked, and just it takes one move to Nottingham Forest, a year to kind of settle in and kind of figure your role out, and a year later, you're starting every game week in, week out, and you're second in the Premier League above the club you're at trying to break into. So there is a flip side to it, you know what I mean? And it's obviously very, very rare exception. Very rare exception. I'll give it the granting, but yeah, just to replace a profile of player that seems like we already have covered after getting rid of players with a very, very similar profile. Maybe it's contractual. Maybe it's easier to get them down on more whittled contracts, more lighter contracts for a very similar player because of his age, because of his lack of experience, his lack of connections to the club. Could be something to do with that. But once again, it does seem a little confused.
Yeah. But I mean, the only transfer of the window, as we said, £15 million spent. overall, not bad. You can tell that these Chelsea owners are trying to make back every single penny that they can, wherever that may be. But there were a couple of players obviously recalled from loan. And the main one was Trevor Chalobah, who at the start of the month looked like a fantastic recall. I mean, after yesterday, I'm thinking Tosin Adarabioyo saved us 6 points more than anyone bar Cole Palmer this season. So I'm thinking that Trevor Chalobah, is it going to be one of those where we've bought him back and he spends the majority of the rest of the season on the bench? I'd be very disappointed if he does, but going with my heart, going with my gut, I think he's an extremely capable defender. I think he's shown that already since coming back from Chelsea in the 2 games that he's played. And yeah, I'm very happy we've brought him back into the fold. I think he could be very, very useful for us for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm surprised you said it the way you said it, because it was almost as if you were saying that you preferred Tosin for Chalobah. I thought it would have been Colwill that you would have wanted replaced after the game that was played yesterday, man. I mean, he looked like probably the worst game he's had since I've seen him, Colwill, man. He really seemed off the ball.
Yeah, I said that in my live match reaction yesterday. I said I think it might be time for a little Chalobah at left centre back and Tosin at right centre back. I mean, the experience could be what we need between those two. A little bit more experienced English centre backs building a bond, for the rest of the season. Because, yeah, you're not wrong. Yesterday's Colwill performance, worst I've seen in a long, long time. I would say worst in a Chelsea shirt, but I feel like there's probably another stinker in there that I'm forgetting somewhere that I've tried to. There's probably a couple of repressed memories, a couple of repressed performances from Colwill in there somewhere. But yeah, I mean, Chalobah stepping in, Colwill hasn't looked the same since Fofana got injured, I don't think. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Chalobah is definitely for me the first one to step up. But yeah, Tosin as well, I mean, has gone from a player that neither of us really kind of saw a place for in this squad to someone that we now kind of, I'm speaking for you, but someone that I think is fairly vital in terms of his role at the moment.
I think it's, especially with the amount of centre backs we have with that same profile. Like I think it's easy to kind of group Tosin in. I think he's one of those players that he might take a little bit of the licks of the players around him when he's putting up a good performance. But yeah, as the week tick on by, I think the respect is definitely building and the performances are definitely growing. I think losing Robert Sanchez has been a good thing for Tosin. He doesn't have to worry about that, and he is impartial to the old turnaround and give it back to the keeper when someone's pressing in on him. And obviously Robert Sanchez, it's always like everyone clenches around Stamford Bridge when the ball goes back towards Robert Sanchez. So it's probably a little bit more comfortable now, especially with Jorgensen there. So yeah, man, I think that Tosin is definitely someone we could probably grow to rely on a little bit more. I don't think he's quite safe from persecution. I think he might maybe still be replaced in the summer, but we'll see what happens.
I was about to say nice one. I'm glad we're on the same page, but maybe he's got a little bit more convincing to do for you. But regarding Trevor Chalobah and that transfer, what are you rating that A to F?
The Trevor Chalobah one?
The decision
flat A. Flat A. If it would have been an A-star, say, if he had been like keeping clean sheets since then, because obviously the performances would have been working wonders, and obviously we have conceded goals, but he essentially scored on his debut back. I think that the actual defensive performances have been solid. Yeah, man, I'll give it an A comfortably.
Yeah, 100%. And again, actually not again. I was going to say again, I agree with you. I didn't on the first one, but yeah, I agree with you. I think he's a solid addition. I just really hope that it's not one of those players that Enzo Maresca gaslights like João Felix saying, oh yeah, this guy is so good, this guy's unbelievable, going to work him into the team, tries him once and then ships him out on loan 6 months after he's been signed. I really hope there is a future for Trevor Chalobah. The way he was treated at the start of the season, nobody expected, least of all myself. I was very vocal in saying that, yeah, Trevor Chalobah's time at the club is up. There is no way he's going to be able to come back. Fingers crossed that we have and we do a 180 on him after his performances and his impact on the team. Fingers crossed that continues to grow in the second half of the season. But yeah, we are both giving that an A in terms of a ranking. And then the other one, Anselminho. Aaron and Sulminho. These two are going to be difficult to rate because I really don't know how much time they're going to be, going to have with the first team in the next 6 months. But Aaron and Sulminho had interest from Marseille, Atlanta, and I think there was another international club as well. But he had interest from high-profile clubs across Europe, and Chelsea decided to keep him. With Josh Achimpong coming through, I don't know whether that means he's going to go into the under-21s. I would assume so first. I don't know. But another centre-back. Let's treat it as a new player, as he is, because, we never really kind of reacted to him like we are reacting to these transfers now when he signed 6 months ago. But Aaron and Sulminho, what do you rate him? And in terms of a transfer, how are you ranking that?
Yeah, I think that this is someone that in the 2 videos that I made that was supposed to be releasing over the last week, I apologise for my lack of chopping it up, by the way. Aaron Anselminho was someone that I was saying I was actually quite happy that we've got him into the club and into the fold. I think there's a really good player in there, right-footed centre-back, someone that we need in the club right now. I think that overall, maybe the lack of experience, maybe the Premier League is an awful lot for right now. But definitely, as someone that can grow into the squad by the end of the season, I will be expecting a few performances from him. And with the lack of left backs, say something should happen on that flank to Cucurella, I think we've got to start looking at maybe an Anselminho as someone that could play on that left back side. So maybe that's part of the plan. Someone that can come in there and hold that role down. Obviously, not ideal. It's not his ideal position. But it is someone that can play in that left back role. So yeah, man, Aaron Anselminho, I'm happy with the recall, but I think it's very sort of situational, not quite ready just yet. But the knife is that it's a dull knife, but it's made of some good metal, and I think it's just going to be about putting it on the grindstone and getting the best we can out of the player. And I think give it 6 months, it will probably be a bit of a higher rating, but for now, probably another C+, probably around that, because it's just not the experience we need in the club right now.
Yeah, I'd go with a C as well. I think in terms of the player, no doubt in the potential that he's got probably a very high ceiling. He's probably going to become a great player for someone. I just don't think it's going to be Chelsea. I just have so little expectations these days for these sort of signings and centre backs. I alluded to it a minute ago with Josh Achimpong. We have so many quality young centre backs. Enzo Maresca's given Harrison Murray Campbell his debut this season. We've got Ishe Samuel Smith looking to break through at left back, but still we do look a little bit weak or a little bit thin at the back. Left back now we've got rid of Ben Chilwell and Renato Vega. Yeah, we've just got Cucurella. No left backs to speak of in the first squad. And it does seem strange, having spent this much money and invested so heavily in the youth, that we are continually looking at the long-term plan rather than the short-term plan, when the short-term problems are very, very prevalent. But yeah, no doubt that he has the potential, like I said. Fingers crossed he gets an opportunity this season to prove it in the first team, maybe in the Conference League. That's where he gets his minutes. Obviously, we are due to be back playing in that competition. I don't think it's until next month. I can't believe it's been 3 months since the group stage of the conference. Like, what sort of competition have we got ourselves into here, man? I think we only have to play 4 games as well. Like 4 more games. If we win all 4, we've won the tournament. Fuck knows. But fingers crossed Aaron Anselminho has a part to play in those 4 and or in the development squad for the rest of the season. But yeah, a fairly medium, fairly middle of the road rating from both myself and Charms. And the last one that has been recalled, interesting to see again what the plan is. I think I already know the answer, but I'm interested to hear your answer. David Datro Fofana. What's going on with him? Because he was the next Drogba when we signed him. He came through, looked quite sharp, and then we got rid of him immediately to Burnley on loan.
Gozet, and now he's at Gozet.
And then he scored. Yeah. Well, yeah, he's gone. He's bounced around to a couple of clubs. He might even have gone somewhere before Burnley. I think he did actually. Oh yeah, he did. He went he went somewhere in Germany.
Germany? Yeah, Union Berlin. Union Berlin. Yeah.
And he had a falling out with the manager. And then he left after, I think it was half a season. And he then went to Burnley and scored an absolute screamer. He scored a couple of goals. He missed a few sitters, but he scored an absolute screamer. We all remember that. And then, he came back and then went back on loan to a team in Turkey. And he's been recalled. I'll be honest, I haven't really been following him in the loan watches. It's kind of been a player that's not really in my periphery, even in terms of his prospects at Chelsea Football Club. But could he, with Chelsea not bringing in a number 9, and Mark Gue last night showing that, I mean, at the moment, he's probably the best option for Chelsea in a number 9 position. Could David Datra Fofana stake his claim for the team in the next few months?
Well, there's definitely an opportunity for it. I'd be hard-pressed to think that he doesn't get games or come off of the bench every now and then, especially if Jackson's dropping clangers. Because, Jackson's been struggling with the finishing again. It feels like it's a problem that we solved and then it's gone back to being a problem. So, yeah, I think that, David Fofana, as much of a player that I would hope that there is in there, it's really hard to see the juice get squeezed. I think that he's had the opportunity to put up big numbers.
Your analogies are funny as fuck today.
I appreciate you, bro. Listen, now you've missed a bit of chance in the podcast, man. We got to get it back. But I got a smorgasbord of them ready for you, bro. But yeah, listen, I think that it's the type of player that on paper works, but it is the type of player that we need. But it's a player that we've seen before, and it didn't work then, and I find it difficult to think it's going to work now. As you said, I find it difficult to imagine him doing more in a game than Nicholas Jackson does positively, and I find it a lot harder to imagine that he would be the one to usurp Mark Gue immediately. I mean, Mark Gue, a kid that at the beginning of the season we were a little bit like, who is this? Even after the first couple of games we played, like, oh my, we doing this? But then he bags a hat trick against, was it Panathinaikos? And it just seems like the form's ticked up since then. It seems like the confidence boost is there. He feels like he's Premier League ready almost. I might be a bit gun shy to call him that just now, but yeah, I think there is definitely a player in there. But yeah, David Fofana, I don't think it's going to be the one to usurp him. I'd probably give the transfer or the recall maybe a D or a C minus. I don't really think that was the striking option we should have gone for, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the option. I mean, I'd give it a C. Similar. I think it gives us another option up front. It gives us another player that wants to potentially go out there and prove himself and has a clean slate with Enzo Maresca. If he does come in and Enzo Maresca does say to him, look, I've seen how you've been playing and what you've done elsewhere. If you come in, have a chance in the Conference League, have a chance in the FA Cup, maybe against Brighton this weekend or next weekend, whichever one's the Premier League game, whichever one's the FA Cup. But if he does get a couple of minutes, a couple of substitute appearances, a couple of cameos and makes good and scores, like we said, now is the best time to be a young player coming into this Chelsea team, because Mark Gue showed last night, all the Chelsea fans love Mark Gue. The work rate he puts in and goals will come from that. He looks so much more dangerous. We look so much more dangerous putting crosses into the box with Mark Gue in there rather than Nicholas Jackson. So if David Datra Fofana can prove a similar number 9 box threat, there's no reason why he can't, get a fair amount of game time in the next few months. Yeah. And it's another option. It's not the ideal option, but look, it's better than no option. And if we, if God forbid something does happen to Nkunku, Jackson, and we are left with just Gue or whatever, well, we saw last night, Jackson and Gue both potentially injured. So David Datra Fofana could be a blessing in disguise, because Christopher Nkunku, as much as we love him, still doesn't look up to holding or leading that line. But yeah, that is the incomings. We did recall Caleb Wiley as well. But then we loaned him straight back out to Watford, so not much point talking about him. And yeah, on to the outgoings. The first we'll get into, which I think is probably the most controversial for the Chelsea fan base, is João Felix. Obviously, 6 months after he was signed, 5, 6, 7 year contract, whatever it is, it's long term. We made a big deal about him coming home again, returning home. And then, Enzo Maresca's talked him up all season, said, look, he's a fantastic player, but we've only got one position for him. He's only tried to facilitate him at Parma once. Come January, he's out in AC Milan. And yes, we've recouped 5 mil loan fee, but I'm not sitting here and applauding that. I'm not really sure what's going on with this move.
Yeah, and it was something that me and my mate got into a little bit of a convo about just before I jumped on here. Like, he posed a question: how is your club able to function with these prison sentence contracts? And I was saying, listen, in the end of the day, like, I'm not a businessman, and Todd Bowley is. He's chopped up all the numbers and he's seen it all on paper and in brass, and like, it clearly makes sense to some degree to make these contracts, these extensive, long 6, 7 year, prison sentences that people like to call them. The thing is with a player like Joao Felix, he's either going to be quality for 6, 7 years and you're going to get the best out of him, or it's just not going to work and no one's going to want to pay the fee for it. The thing is, right? If he goes to AC Milan and he cooks, they're going to take him off of us. They're going to take him off of us with 6 years left in his contract, and we're going to get a good price for him. I'm sure the release clause put in there. What do you know? Do you know what it was?
You really think we're going to get a good price for Joao Felix from AC Milan? Look at what they've. I mean, number one, Italian clubs in general fucking broke as fuck.
Stingy, yeah.
And number two, not even stingy, bro, broke. And number two, AC Milan have fleeced us in the past. Pulisic, we paid 60, got what, 20, 18. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, we got what, like 12. Giroud, Tomori, Abraham.
Yeah, but when they were on their way out, were these players that you missed? Were these players that were like when they went out? Now, yeah, in hindsight, but at the time when they were going out, no one had a problem with these sales. I mean, Tammy Abraham, he needs to be replaced.
Giroud,
Tomori, I agree with. Tomori, I agree with, but that is a player that at the time we thought, yeah, we can upgrade from here, and we had the Rudiger on the back end as well, so we were like, yeah, listen, we could do this again. And I would argue that Real Madrid fleeced us more by taking Rudiger off of us. You know what I mean? But I guess the prices around AC Milan, fair enough. Like, I can understand this. It's a bit confusing business, but I can't see us having a massive problem with the fact that we bought in essentially a world-class player who was supposed to be top 3, top 5 in the world at one point. Supposed to be, never hit those heights. I'm not saying he ever did, but he was supposed to be a player that went in there and did everything. And everyone had these massive hopes for Joao Felix. We've had the opportunity to try and make that work twice. The second time, it was probably a bit more us than them, but we gave it a try. It didn't work, and now we're going to loan him out to AC Milan. And let's say he cooks over there. We either get him back in form, which is something that Joao Felix, does bounce around with. He does have a good form, and then he can carry that on to a new club. We've seen that happen as well. He does tend to dip off on it. If he has a bad season, then we're probably in the mud a little bit, because we get him back. We get a player who's probably a bit overvalued, sitting on a £200,000 a week contract, £300,000 a week contract. Don't even play football. So yeah, it's either going to go really good or really bad. But I'm just, I pray for the really good, but it's probably the really bad. So overall, I would say that the transfer, I'll rank the whole Joao Felix saga from even getting him in to getting him out. I would say the whole thing's been a D. It's been a little bit of a drama, a bit of a D minus. I don't want to go quite as far as call it an F, because that would imply the performances weren't there, and they were there at points. But overall, the business behind it is nothing short of questionable. And yeah, although I'm probably happy for him, it frustrates me as a Chelsea fan. So I'll give it a D, D minus.
Yeah, and again, I'm not far off. I'd go E. I'm not, I just do not understand the logic of letting a player of Joao Felix's talent go. Even if you're not playing him, man, why let a player of his talent go for no real returns and not bringing in another player? You know what? I was thinking it last night. Like, I was overthinking it. It got to the point where I was like, you know what? There's no way we can be letting this guy go and not sign it. We must be getting Rafa Leao or something in return. I was like, there must be something coming in return for us to be doing this, because it does seem like a massive fucking favor. Like, Joao Felix, I rate incredibly highly. I think it's unfair that he's not getting the minutes that he's getting. And yes, sometimes he hasn't been putting in the performances that we do expect from him. But same time, he hasn't really been getting consistent opportunities. When he has, it's been cameos and against shit teams. And more often than not, he's balled out. So I don't think you can sit here and blame Joao Felix and say that he deserves to be out. A few of these Chelsea fans are sitting there going, oh yeah, he's shit, get him out of my club as soon as possible. I mean, at the start of the season, we were sitting here saying we've got the best depth in the world. We've got players like Joao Felix and Kunku on the bench, ready to bring on. Neto on the bench, ready to bring on. Bless. Now we're looking at it and going, we don't want these players on the bench. Get them gone. Let them go to AC Milan. Let them rot. Let this Chelsea team lose money. I mean, I think it's probably to balance the books. 5 mil for each loan fee. We've been very, very strict on negotiating, and we've haggled for 20 days over the loan fee for certain players. And yeah, I don't know if it's kind of a balancing book situation to be able to spend more in the summer. That's what it seems like to me. But I read today that he should be coming back before the FIFA Club World Cup in June. So it'll be interesting to see if he's integrated back into this Chelsea squad. I hope that he does exceptionally well at AC Milan. They've got a superb team now, and they signed Santiago Jimenez as well, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
So they're absolutely building, and if I'm not mistaken, they're still in the Champions League. Fingers crossed we get to see some of João Felix on the big stage doing what he does best. A transfer that we both rate fairly negatively on the scale, the worst so far at least. From an international loan move to one closer to home, Axel Disasi turned down a loan move to Spurs, despite Chelsea preferring to send him to a club that is not UCL competition. But in the end, we caved. Aston Villa offered, I think it was between 5 and 6 mil again for the loan fee, which seems nuts to me for 6 months for Axel Disasi. But actually, yeah, the more I think about it, that figure can't be right, man. 6 months, 5 mil, $1 million a month for Axel Disasi, and you have to pay his wages, brother.
Yep. I've read the same thing.
I've just completely changed after doing the mental maths in my head. A star, bro, fucking A plus. How the fuck have we managed to get 5 mil for 6 months of Axel Disasi, and it weakens a UCL competitor? Todd Bowley, masterclass.
Well, listen, that one there, I think, he probably should have gone to Spurs for multiple reasons. But yeah, it's a player that has been prone to the odd disaster class. I think that it's good. It's a good job from Todd Bowley, really, to get him moved on to a club where, he'll probably play, but I don't think he'll be crazy important. And it's a club that I reckon we'd beat any time 11v11. So yeah, man, I'm happy with the move as well. Maybe not for me an A star. I think all the maths around it is fantastic. I'll give it an A minus. Just there's just something holding me back from saying it was an excellent transfer. I just got a feeling like maybe strengthening an opposition like that is probably doing a rival club a favour.
You feel like it is strengthening them?
A little bit.
I feel like we've both been pretty. I feel like you've been pretty scathing of Disasi.
Yeah, I have, mate. But and Badiashile, and I probably said I preferred Badiashile to Disasi, more times than the other way around. But I don't know. There's a reason he was at the club. He wasn't a stinker out and out. And I reckon with the right management, there might be a good player in there. So listen, a side like Villa where he can get the opportunity, maybe comes good. But yeah, once again, I'm giving it an A minus. I'm happy with it. I'll be even happier if it is made permanent. I hope he cooks so that we can make that a permanent move. And if we do, yeah, then I might change to an A star. But till then, I'll go for the A minus. There's just some lingering doubts.
Fair enough. And yeah, I mean, all jokes aside, if any Aston Villa fans are watching this, he's not that bad. I mean, we laugh and joke, and he's made some terrible mistakes. There's no getting away from it. He's had some stinkers in a Chelsea shirt. He's dropped some absolute clangers. One of the best own goals I've ever seen in my life, not just for a Chelsea player, but in my life. Fantastic finish. 40 yards? I can't remember what it was. Weak foot. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was at least 35 yards. Man.
But more often than not, we've played him out of position in a system that doesn't really suit him, in a role that doesn't really suit him. And at times, he has looked fantastic. I remember, I think it was his debut. Liverpool scored the goal from a corner. He can be a beast from set pieces, very good in the air, very good dual, very aggressive centre-back. And if you are playing a bit more of a low block, and probably, a back five, playing as in a three in a back five will probably help him. So if he's doing that for kind of rotational shifts in Europe or even in the Premier League, he probably isn't a bad, he's definitely not a bad depth player to have. And before we get on to the next one, quick word on Aston Villa's transfer window. Marcus Rashford, Axel Disasi, Marco Asensio in the final day, and they managed to retain Ollie Watkins. Obviously, only John Duran being the major loss.
And John Duran, I understand that there is a fantastic player in there, but for the money at the age and the profile. John Duran's one of those mythical football players that we'll talk about in 10, 15 years. You remember that kid, John Duran, who used to come off the bench, score wonder goal, and then left and ruined his career in Saudi. And it type beat, you know what I mean? And
type shit.
Like type shit. The difference is he's like a Delta Rat, but actually he's quality and gives a fuck. He's not just doing it for a shawarma at the end of the day. But yeah, man, I think that overall they've had a really good window, really strong window. They've bolstered their attacking options a lot more than they've weakened them, which is a crazy thing to say after losing a player of Duran's quality. But I just look at that side now and I just think Watkins, Rodgers, Rashford, like Asensio, they got some heat there, man, going forward.
Tielemans, Onana, Kamara, they got a great midfield as well. Martinez in goal, one of the best goalkeepers in the world, or won the award for best goalkeeper in the world, if you believe FIFA.
They got a team of the season, ultimate team goalkeeper in net as well, 96 rated card, can't go wrong.
Playing back up at left back, they got
Axel Disasi next to him, left centre back.
God. Absolute players. But yeah, on to the next Chelsea outgoing, because there are a few for us to get through, a few more than the incomings. Carney Chukwuemeka, a player that I am much more disappointed than Axel Disasi to see the back of. A player that I think could have done a job, particularly with us going into the market and buying a centre midfielder. I know not exactly the same profile as Amougou, but I think Carney Chukwuemeka is a fantastic player. And to be honest, for him, I mean, the move as a whole, I could give two different ratings here, because the rating for the move for him is an A, I think, or maybe even an A+. I think it's a fantastic move. We've seen so many young English players go and succeed over there. Jadon Sancho, Bino Gittins in recent years, to name a few. There have been some fantastic talents to come out of Borussia Dortmund. Jude Bellingham, Erling Haaland, some of the best players in the world have plied their trade and learned their craft at Borussia Dortmund. So fantastic move for him. German league will suit him really, really well. But for Chelsea, I've got to give it another E. I just don't get it. I just don't understand why we would let players, and it's not unexpected, so I probably shouldn't be going so harsh. It probably should be a D, maybe even a C-, whatever. But I'm going E because of how much I rate this guy and because of how much I think this is an oversight from Enzo Maresca and the Chelsea board.
Yeah, I can understand it. I might. For me, I see some similarities in a player like Chukwuemeka and a player like Amougou from what I've heard and seen. The descriptives seem to cover my opinion on Chukwuemeka. And although, I think he's a great player. I think he's a hard worker. He's got great vision. He's got great passing range. He's good at that type of stuff. He could play the dirty ball. And I think that will benefit Borussia Dortmund. And, he kind of took the words out of my mouth, because I was going to say, I think that the system that he's going to be finding himself in Dortmund is going to be something that, really makes him flourish. And as much as I do want to agree with you and give it an E and talk about how much I think this is going to affect Chelsea negatively and how we could do with a player of his profile, his physicality, and, his experience, because he's been there and he's done that now. But we are going to get him back. This is not a permanent move. This is a loan move. And I think that is a beneficial thing. I think that going and getting him some game time where he can go and get, that confidence to realize, what? I might be world class. I think Germany's a league where you can go figure that out about yourself. I feel like if Jude Bellingham had stayed in England and not made that move to Dortmund, we wouldn't see the player that we see today at Real Madrid. I think that confidence that he was able to get there and understanding the player that he was over a short 1-2 year, maybe 3 year period, created the player that he is. And although it is only in 6 months, we could, if we can get Carney Chukwuemeka essentially put in a pack-a-punch and get him back in 6 months, that's what I'll do. If I can go get the best out of this player and I can go really get his confidence boosted, I can go get him putting up numbers and I can go get him playing some more creative, sexier football and getting the confidence to realise that he can do that, come into that Chelsea squad, he looks around and he's got players like Esteval there, he's got players like Palmer there, he's got players like Paez there, players that want to play that sexy flair, fun football, that creative, hard to defend football, that 2000s football. And I think that we can do that. And I think a player like Carney Chukwuemeka can control the chaos, almost like a good version of a kid in Dewsbury Hall, or even like a good version of a Conor Gallagher. So yeah, I think overall I'll give it a C plus. I'm happy with it, man. I genuinely am. I as much as I would like the player to stay, I just think that the what will benefit from this move will outweigh the negative of not having him over 6 months.
Do you think, because it hasn't been confirmed by Chelsea, they just said it was on loan, but Fabrizio did say that there was an option to buy for a little bit over the release clause of 40 mil. So if he did go at the end of the season, say 45 million, would that change your rating?
Probably, yeah. It'd probably be a little bit more lower because I do have, but maybe not. Maybe not, because I feel like for every point that I would deduct for us losing a quality player, I'd probably add points on for such a profitable transfer in the situation that we're in. And I think
24 mil,
overall,
I think, profit.
how much?
I think 24 mil, if I'm not mistaken. I think it
You
was
know what I
21.
mean?
It might have been 28, but 21 is
Exactly, man.
in the
Like
mind.
it's a player that we can essentially nearly double the transfer fee of in such a volatile market. So if we are able to do that, then yeah.
I think that overall, let's give it a flat C with all of the positives and negatives outweighing each other.
Yeah, we paid 20 mil, so yeah, a 25 odd mil profit if he does go in the summer. But yeah, I'd be disappointed. I think it's another player that we just haven't, and obviously, well, may never now see the best of in a Chelsea shirt. What could have been if he didn't get injured after that goal against West Ham. What a fantastic goal and performance that was from Carney Chukwuemeka, and that injury just kind of curtailed his entire career, as it has done for so many Chelsea players. They get a major injury and all of a sudden their career's over. But on to the next one, and another centre midfielder. And this one is kind of about as pointless as it gets. Cesare Casadei. I'm not 100% sure on the fee. I think it was 13 million that we sold him for, but we've sold him for pretty much exactly the same as what we paid for him 2 years ago. Haven't really given him a chance. A player that Enzo Maresca used last season on loan at Leicester and then hasn't used for Chelsea this year. And again, I've got to ask the question. It's probably going to sound boring and repetitive now, but I've got to ask the question, with buying another 15 million euro player centre mid, what's the point of selling a 13 million euro player centre mid?
And above all else, Casadei is the player that I've had quite the eye on for a minute now. I thought he's a quality player. I thought he's someone that I think I can see big things for the Italian national team in 5-6 years, genuinely. And that's a country that's been dictated by their midfield. So playing the strings there, it's beyond confusing. I think that for the age profile, he's a player we can afford to keep rotating on and off the bench. He's a player that wouldn't mind the hours, the long waits on the bench, and he wouldn't mind getting that experience and reps in Europe. It's the manager mode signing, if you will. It's the player you get in with the hope of eventually getting in for when your club's in the Premier League. He'll be the 89 rated centre mid who does it all. And we had that there. We had that player with the ability to grow with limitless potential. And 13 million back, it's besotting more than it's angering. It's exactly what's wrong with the football club. It's profit-orientated decision-making that doesn't really look at the state of the football and play. And I think that, once again, there's a fantastic player in there. And I don't know why Maresca was so gun-shy with wanting to use him and why he wanted to get rid of him. And I always said that there must be something going on there, or he just doesn't rate his abilities. He even said multiple times in interviews that Cesare Casadei will be going, which is, once again, it had confused me at the time. And now to see him gone with barely a lick of a profit to a club that's got no aspirations to do anything in Europe, just a middle of the table, bog standard Torino side in Italy, who, as far as I'm concerned, have been struggling. It's a bad transfer. I don't like it. I'm going to give it an F.
F.
If you can name me one positive from the transfer, I'll change it. But I can't name one.
I mean, we got to see a good quality player that we hope will succeed in the future. If you're asking me to find one positive, that's how low I'm digging. But no, I hear you. I agree with you. It's not a good transfer. Again, I mean, it's not a good look for Chelsea, but it's not new. Anything we say won't change it. Nothing will ever change in terms of the Chelsea business model. Let's be honest with ourselves. I'd say, E. Again, getting rid of a player that could have been very useful, and replacing him with someone who probably won't play for the first team for the first couple of months. And then when he does, we'll make 2 or 3 cameo appearances and then we'll never see him again. But from a young player to, well, one of the most senior players in the squad, maybe not anymore, Ben Chilwell, completing a loan move to Crystal Palace. I think it was reported that we will cover 50% of his salary, which fair enough, because I think he's on over 200 grand a week, which for Ben Chilwell is a little bit nuts. But I mean, he's been collecting that for not playing football, and now he's going to be collecting half of that from us for playing football elsewhere for the next 6 months. Ben Chilwell, I mean, obviously frozen out this season by Enzo Maresca. Is there, before we get into the rankings and how we feel about the transfer, is there still a player there? Obviously, Thomas Tuchel, was the one that used him and Reece James, made him hit his heights at Chelsea in that 2021 season. Is there a resurgence for Ben Chilwell in this Crystal Palace and potentially England squad as well?
There is a player in there. I think it's the mental and the fitness that holds him back. But when it comes to the footballing ability, there's no question that's a Champions League winning left back. That's a player who's been to the highest heights in football, and there's a reason he got there. His ability carried him. He's a great player. It's just hard to see what happened to him at Chelsea. He put up a couple of stinky performances. I think he had a bit of an injury. Big weight gain. He looked like he weren't practicing or training or doing nothing. He looked like he was just on the bend all the time. I feel like maybe he fell out of love with the game a little bit. But I think this move to Crystal Palace might light a little fire up him. I think that it might give him the opportunity. Listen, Ben, what are you doing, lad? We can fucking start for Crystal Palace. What are we doing? We can't start for Crystal Palace, Ben. He'll be having that dialogue with himself. And I know that he'll be wanting to push himself and make sure that he gets into that squad, which now that they've got him, I can see him playing week in, week out. It's just, will he have good performances? That's yet to be seen. But I think overall, it was time for the move. I'm surprised it wasn't a straight sell. I'm surprised we didn't try and push for it. I'm sure that there is, once again, a release clause on there. But yeah, man, I think that this is a good move for the player, a good move for the club. Both clubs involved, that is, and yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm happy for him, and I hope that he has a good, essentially finish to his career. I can see him there for 3 or 4 more, and then hanging it up. To be honest.
Yeah, I agree. The most important thing this January was to get him off the books, I think, or at least temporarily or half off the books, however you want to call it. But getting him out the door was the most important thing. I'm going to give it a C just because it's not a permanent transfer. And I do think at the end of the day, we need to just get rid. We need to stop playing around, get our hands out our ball, just get him rid. Whether it means making a compromise in terms of his contract and paying him a few £100,000 a week extra while he's somewhere else, I don't really know. We're paying 50% of his loan supposedly at Crystal Palace, his loan wages, should I say, at Crystal Palace. So maybe there would be some sort of compromise whereby we could kind of help them out, help them kind of wean down his transfers. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to whether he is willing to accept a big pay cut, because Crystal Palace are not going to be able to pay him the same wages that we have been paying him. And let's be honest, it's a little bit criminal for him to be on those wages, regardless of how good he is and was in 2021. A player like Ben Chilwell shouldn't be on 200 grand plus a week. So great for Chelsea to get him off the books, and obviously a player that has just been not contributing to the first team whatsoever, through no fault of his own, of course. But he's just been sitting on the bench. It's not like he's been giving us bit part cameo roles where he's been helping the team and bringing us his experience. I don't really feel like he's had a very positive effect on the Chelsea team this season. So glad to see the back of him with the greatest respect. And yeah, let's see if he can compete with the likes of Lewis Hall and Miles Lewis-Skelly for left back for England, Carl Walker-Peters, Harwood Bellis. I don't know. It's not a very talented tool of players right
Leaf
now.
Davis.
And Lewis Hall's got it in the Leaf Davis. You love Leaf Davis, man. Lewis Hall's got it.
You hated that one, innit?
I mean, it just who calls their son Leaf, bruv? Like,
he's a good player.
Nuts. Like, all due respect again, Leaf, bruv. You belong on a tree. But from one experienced left back, to one far less. Another player that's been at Chelsea just 6 months before being sent out on loan. This one, I'm not so fussed about João Felix, and I mean the 5 million loan fee that we've got for him is a significant dent in his initial transfer fee, which was only around 15 million, I believe. So we've already recouped 30% back of his fee for another 6 months. So I think pretty shrewd business for Chelsea for Renato Vega. That being said, again, letting Chilwell, Vega, Wiley all go in the same window does leave me a little bit. It does leave me a little bit confused as to why. I know he wants to play centre back, but if he's guaranteed game time, guaranteed to be playing, is there no way we could have convinced him to stay at the club he signed for 6 months ago for 7 years?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? And it makes me feel like, players like Ishi Samuel Smith, who you mentioned earlier, these academy defenders, these academy fullbacks. It might have something to do with them. It might be to do with, let's get a project player in like that, in that position, while Cucurella has been, such a stalwart there. Maybe it's that. It just feels so risque, and especially with 3 left backs gone in the same window. Yeah, it's definitely confusing.
100%. But that pretty much rounds it up. I mean, we've got another couple of outgoings. As I mentioned, Caleb Wiley there, gone to Watford, didn't play too many games at Strasbourg. Seemed like he was going to be recalled to free up a loan move for Mamadou Sarr. But that transfer, despite being rumoured and reported to be completed by Fabrizio, I believe, has not materialised on the Chelsea website and on socials, hasn't been announced. So whether we've signed Mamadou Sarr from Strasbourg, I do not know. But we have recalled Caleb Wiley and sent him to Watford. Best of luck to him. Travis Akamia as well, a youth player who we bought from Watford a couple of years ago, has gone back to them on a permanent. And yeah, Harvey Vale to QPR. Reece Russell-Denny has gone to, I can't remember off the top of my head. Zach Sturge has gone to Millwall. And there have been a few other players, few other deadline day moves for the Chelsea youngsters. So it'll be good for a few of them to get some experience in the, men's football, I guess you can say, because they do play academy football still. But Charms, I mean, circling back, that obviously ties us off in terms of individual transfers. Worst, biggest loss in terms of the players that have gone. Who's going to be the biggest loss to the squad?
Well, this is completely different to worst transfer we've been involved in. Biggest loss to the squad probably is Chukwuemeka, based on probably the position and the fact that there was an opening for him to play in that role. It would have been João Felix if we didn't have, Palmer and Jackson there, pretty much. But yeah, I think Chukwuemeka is probably the one that's going to be losing out on the most potential game time out of the bunch. And if not, Renato Vega.
Fair enough. And how would you, I mean, we've been ranking individual players. How would you rank Chelsea's window as a whole? 15 million net profit, 1 player bought in, 1 player recalled, and a few left. How would you rate it A to F?
I'll give it a C- because I'm not the best pleased with how we've handled business over the window. I think that we could have done more going outward for a striker. I think we could have done more kind of caring about each position naturally, rather than being so profit orientated and so profit focused. I think that the whole expectation of the recalling and calling on loans and sending on loans, it almost feels like we're playing like a loophole. It doesn't sit comfortably with me with all of these players on loan. Because you look at our squad, roster. There's 45 people on there, but you look at the team and it feels like we're hollow, and that just doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, I would say on the back end of a January just finished, all in, I would give it a C-.
Fair enough. Shout out to everybody in the comments that's been watching. JJ, Gabriel, appreciate you, my guys. Yeah, I mean, uneventful Chelsea window. We normally get a lot, particularly under Bowley. We've had very eventful transfer windows. January as well, seems like they're not, they're very trigger happy owners. They're not scared to go out and spend in January. So it does seem interesting that it has been quite conservative this year. But let us know in the comments what you think. What would you rate this year's transfer window? A to F. Give us your comments as well about individual players. How do you rate those transfers? Who do you think is the most impactful signing that we've made, including Trevor Chalobah, David Datra Fofana, and Aaron Anselmini, all recalled from their respective loans? Who do you think is the most impactful sale that we've made? Charm says Carney Chukwuemeka. I'm inclined to agree with him. I do feel like potentially later in the season we could regret João Felix the most. I do feel like that one is the most confusing to me, but we'll see, man. We'll have to do a recap. We'll have to revisit this in 6 months, see how it turned out, see how the players are getting on. And of course, more players now have been added to Loan Watch, our weekly series, taking a look at the Chelsea youngsters across the globe. Andre Santos leading the charge for Strasbourg. One less player there for me to watch, but still going to be watching them, still going to be covering them in the Loan Watch weekly, along with, well, now Ben Chilwell, Carney Chukwuemeka. That should be fun, actually. And it will mean I get to watch more of Dortmund, get to watch more of AC Milan, because the majority of Chelsea players, for fuck's sake, the majority of Chelsea players have been, or that I've been watching anyway, have been from the lower leagues. But yeah, make sure to give us a like, give us a comment, subscribe to the channel as well. Charms, got anything to finish on?
I love being here, and I'm sorry I haven't. Simple as, just technical issues holding me back from giving my thought pieces to you. I would have essentially said all of this, and you would have all known. But it is what it is. Next week's a new week. This week's a new week, and we keep it moving. Thank you kindly, guys. Love you all. God bless. Take care. Keep that blue flag flying high, and hopefully David Datro Fofana is Didier Drogba in the flesh. Let's go.
100%, man. Let's get it. New episodes this week, guys. Loan Watch, chopping it up with Charms. We'll be back this week. Don't watch that. And of course, we will be covering Chelsea this Saturday, 8 p.m. Brighton in the Premier League, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. But we will, you will see us on your screens before then. Obviously, as always, Two Blues podcast on the Instagram and the TikTok. Don't know why I'm still looking at the camera when the camera's down there now. Force a habit, but it is what it is, man. Technological problems aside, where production value is going up, so we're making it, man. But yeah, we'll be back. Appreciate you guys. Up the Chelsea.